Hi, I'm Chris from Marineware in Southampton, and today we're talking about our Durepox range with a bit of a focus on dinghies. So, joining me today is my colleague from the technical sales team, Simon Crawford. Hi, Simon.
Hi, Chris. Hi, everyone.
And also joining us is Pete Jary from Zest Boatworks. Hi, Pete.
Hiya.
Pete, just tell us a little bit about what you guys do.
Well, we do mostly dinghy repairs and refurbishments, really.
Cool, perfect. So we're gonna, as I say, we're gonna talk to you about dinghies. And Pete, this is one of your boats, isn't it?
It is. This is an International 14 that came to us as a box of bits, effectively. So bare pre-break carbon, and we ended up gluing it all together and then finishing it off.
Okay, so did it take fairing, or was it just straight in with a high build? Did you high build it?
We just Durepoxed it. So the hull was good enough that it was fair enough just to be primed with a few coats of Durepox, a bit of filling around the hull to deck joins and where we bonded the deck on, and then it was just couple of coats of Durepox primer, flatted back, and then a final coat sprayed on top.
Okay, so it is a base color and then the clear coat over the top.
Yes, yeah. So the clear coat was just all Craft 2000, just on the deck down to the gun ledges. So you're still getting the advantage of using the Durepox primer for what it's for,
Okay.
but then just some UV stability on the deck.
Okay, and is that a foam cockpit or is that a non-skid cockpit?
That is a non-skid cockpit. So the bare carbon work on the cockpit was all Durepox cleared with, I think it was matted down a bit, and then grip sprayed in with Durepox clear and Griptex.
Ah.
Pete, just a quick question. I mean, you guys have been using Durepox for quite some time now. And we're seeing it being used more and more and more on foils, especially hydrofoils that are coming in, and on dinghies generally. What do you think people? What do you use it for? What do you find is great about Durepox?
We primarily it's very quick to use, which is why we like it. It doesn't take a long time to go off. You haven't got the waiting times that you have, for example, like on 545. And it's a thicker paint as well, so you can spray it out of the gun pretty much straight out of the can and get a good thick build up for doing some fairing, but you can also spray it nice and thin to give you a finished top coat. The surface is very hard wearing once it's cured properly, so you don't get all that micro scratching and things that you would get with even any of the other yacht-based paints.
Yeah.
And particularly on foils where they're going up and down inside cases and you're raising and lowering them, they just don't get scratched and marked. And apparently it's faster through the water than normal paint finishes. So why would you not use it?
Yeah. There's an interesting subject in one. I know that.
Well, exactly.
The New Zealanders, the New Zealanders. I mean, one of the reasons they use it on the America's Cup boats is because they get a really, really good finish on it, which they find they reckon reduces friction through the water by quite a dramatic amount. And but that's always something that the designers will argue about best finishes below the water and all sorts of things. But yeah. Oh, thank you.
They've spent millions finding, the fastest paint finish. So why would you argue with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People still do.
I'll move on to another one of your projects here.
Yes, this was an 18-foot skiff that needed quite a lot of work doing to it in the end to get it to look like it does in this video. But again, it was all primed and faired with just Durepox primer, just the standard grey primer that you sell.
Mm-hmm.
And then a finish coat applied that we could flat back on the hull. And again, Allcraft 2000 clear sprayed on the deck areas just to give it that sort of UV resistance where it's just sat out in the sun and being rigged up and things, just to stop it sort of going that milky colour that Durepox goes. And then again, the cockpit area has been gripped with high performance clear and Griptex with a bit of a Union Jack underneath it.
Okay, it looks great. I remember seeing that boat in your workshop actually before you did it, so I saw what state it came in at. So yeah,
it was. I think we found 23 bits of delamination on the bottom or something. It was
proper rebuild.
Oh, yeah.
When you mentioned that you actually used, so you sort of used the Durapil primer as a primer and then almost as a base coat. When you put it on the primer, do you use a little less thinners in it or reducer in it to build it a little bit more?
It depends on the state of the bottom of the boat. If we've, for example, if we've got a moth-in that has already been painted, and we're just doing a repaint and a fair on it, we'll thin the Durepox down so it's a nice thin coat just to give us a primer layer to then paint fresh paint on top. But if we get a bare X set in from Maguire's, which is just a laminate finish, I'll be brushing it on straight out of the can, no thinners, no nothing, just to give us that big pinhole filling, almost high build type consistency that then I can flat back and then just spray Allcraft on top, so you don't end up with that sort of matting like you get if you're trying to spray a top coat on top of a high build primer, where it sort of soaks the gloss out of it a bit. It just doesn't do that, but it's thick enough to be able to put on in a good few brush coats, over a series of hours rather than other timescales of other epoxy primers. You
probably wanted to give away your trade secrets, Pete, but I know I've always sprayed the Durepox primer with about 35% thinners. Actually, I use quite a lot of thinners, and I tend to walk around the job more times to build it because I keep the finish a bit neater. But you go somewhere else and someone uses very little, much less thinners and maybe a bigger fluid tip in their gun. What do you, Chris, when you were spraying Durepox, what was your primer? What was your favourite setup for it?
Smaller items, sort of dinghy sized and components. I tended to use a 1.2 gravity gun. I was a bit like you, intended to thin it quite a lot to try and get a better finish to reduce the rubbing. But yeah, sometimes if you were just coating something to cover it, you'd just roll it on. I know it's not entirely meant to be a roll-on product, but you could just build the coats up and sand it back.
But yeah, I don't know whether you agree with this. One of the things that we sort of find across the board with the Durepox is that it seems to be really tolerant. You know, people use less thinners, bigger fluid tips in their guns, get lots of paint on, lots of thickness of paint on. Other people use more thinners, like you just heard, and put it on a thinner coating. And whatever anyone seems to do with it always seems to go off okay. It doesn't solvent trap and things like that. It seems to be pretty robust. Have you found much the same around the workshop when you're using it for different purposes?
Yeah, I mean, like any boat workshop, ours is 6 degrees to 30 degrees throughout the year, and we've never had an issue with spraying it out of a 2mm needle, not thinned at all, to spraying it as so. I've only ever really gone as low as a 1.4 with it, but again, 30% thinners to give you that finish that you can just flat out. And there's never a moment where it's not gone off all the way through, depending on how thick you put on. The only thing you've got to be careful of is your overcoating time with darker colours. If you leave it too long and you flat it back, you then start getting halos where you rub through the layers because it's gone off too much and it hasn't. I don't know why, but it just doesn't it seems to have a layer between the two sprayed layers, and that's the only thing. If you're spraying it thin, you've just got to just keep going around your job 10 minutes time, because otherwise you will find these halos appearing as you flat through the layers. That's the only thing. But other than that, never had a problem going off. No solvent entrapment, no solvent pop. There's never anything. Doesn't matter how much thinners you put in it, really.
It's pretty incredible now. You look at some of the other paints we do in our range, Chris, and we go through the data sheets that we do, and it must be sprayed like this, and this is the range of thinners, and this is viscosity it's got to be at, and and this all these strict rules we put into the super yacht type stuff, and it's just the one thing I find quite refreshing about Durepox is its ability to be changed in its use, and it doesn't give us too much trouble when it's used in that way. But I think that I'm loving the Union Jack non-skid on that. Pete, it looks lovely, that boat. So yeah. Moving on, I think that's a picture of your stand at the dinghy show, isn't it?
It is. That was COVID dinghy show. That was.
Yeah,
it was.
The
Wasn't
last one going into it, wasn't it? I remember it well. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
But,
pretty much drove from that to a lockdown, didn't we?
Yeah, pretty nice. A bit scary.
Yeah.
It was. And we talked about foils a little bit at the beginning of this chat, and foils are something where we use it for a slightly different purpose. Is you in the dinghies we just saw, it's about aesthetics, it's about protection, but actually in the foils it's about durability, isn't it? When you're going up and down boxes, and they're pretty highly loaded, some of these foils as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing we've found, particularly now, just looking at these foils here with the foiling boats, is actually it's more, particularly with like the A-class and the Nectar 17 board, they stay down all the time anyway. But actually, it's more the sediment in the water, the speed of the water going over the foil. You do get some almost cavitation on the back of some of the 17 foils as well. Just chipping away at the paint rather than necessarily scratches from going up and down inside the case.
It's interesting the loads you see on it. I mean, we're actually Durepox Clear was originally used on the foils of the America's Cup foiling boats, but when they moved up to the AC 75s, the really big ones out in America, when they were racing under the Golden Gate Bridge, they struggled a little bit because the hydrostatic loads just going through the water was so big. If there was any adhesion issues in the paint, it would exploit them very quickly. And they actually invented Durepox Extreme for that. Which have you ever had a chance to use the Durepox Extreme?
I've got it on my A-class foils at the moment, and we've used it on a couple of other things just to see if it will solve some people's problems. Just with kite surfing foils and those sorts of things. Again, because of not because they're damaging them, but more particles in the water and the sort of the speed and the flow over the foil, just eating the current finish that they have on them, which is not fantastic. So
yeah, it'd be interesting to see the results from that. And Chris, actually, this is one of your foils next door to us. The grey one on the picture in front of us is
it's out of an A-class.
That's out of an A-class as well. So okay.
Yeah.
What have you got on that? What have you got on that one? I mean, you're clear on the coat on that carbon foil there, aren't you, Pete?
Yes, yeah, we're limited by the class rules as to what we can put on the 17 foils.
Of course. And are you primer on the just primer on that foil, Chris?
Yeah, in that photo it's just primer. I can't remember whether we cleared it afterwards or whether it was left. I think it just got rubbed back to about 1,000 grit and left at that. It was that particular set of foils came in and we were just painting them, and the boat owner was going to tweak them afterwards. So we literally just sprayed them, but that is just the basic grey Durepox that's on there at the moment. Some
of the early AC boats, but the have you guys ever used, Pete? Have you ever used a combination of the primer and the clear together?
Yes, a couple of times. And the good thing is you can spray it wet on wet. So if you're putting down like a base color of Durepox primer, you can then just go straight over with some high performance clear because it's all the same system.
Yeah, I used to use it quite helpfully for flatten down. So if you had a primer but with the clear added, you would still end up with a more satin finish rather than the matte finish of the primer.
Yeah.
But I also interesting. You mentioned that thing about the haloing between the darker colours and the primer. I used to find about 5 to 10% clear in there used to help
Okay.
with that in the darker colours. Have you ever had that problem, Chris?
Yeah, it's one of those problems that only ever really cropped up when you're trying to rush something. But yeah, having the clear, you could almost put a bit in as a bit like a blending solvent. It increased the resin a bit, which helped it not flatten out as much. Yeah, I use that quite often because quite a lot of people like to get a bit of a shine on their foils towards the end, particularly on yacht foils. They seem to like them shiny rather than matte.
But then it's the age-old question of, does it, because you've added clear into the Durepox, is it a bit slower than Durepox?
Well, the one thing you have to the other thing you have to watch out for is that the overcoat time with Durepox primer, I think, is 72 hours wet on wet without sanding if you want to push it that long. But the overcoat window on the high performance clear is 2 hours. So when you put one with the other, which overcoat window do you work on? Personally, and Chris will probably have, or so will you probably, is that you're always such a hurry to get these things out the door commercially. Everyone wants their boats back on the water. You tend to 2 hours is
2 hours is good.
Yeah.
I want to be sanding down my Durepox in 2 hours.
Yeah. I used to use that mixture of clear and primer to come up with a satin, but we now have a flattening agent for the clear coat itself. Have you used that, Pete?
No.
Oh, okay. It's the Ace Matte, which is a powdered flattening agent. We can mix into the Durepox clear, and it's completely designed for clear coat flattening. It's very specific for clear coat flattening. So although you're putting a white powder in, you can now adjust the gloss just on the clear. Which is quite a useful tool, a new one to us actually. So yeah. We'll have to get some down to you. You can have a play.
I'll try it. I quite like my preferred method at the moment.
You're not going to tell us what that is, are you, Pete?
I'm not going to tell you what that is. No.
We can't tell everyone how to do it. They won't come to you, will they?
Well, this is it.
Clear coat dinghy masks. That's been a pretty popular subject in the last year as well. And
yeah. There's been a lot of people talking about clear coating their masts during their lockdowns and things, and which products to do it with. And yeah, I mean, I've been using high performance clear for, God, I don't know. How long have you been selling high performance clear for? I've probably been that long, if not a bit longer.
Yeah.
It's designed to stick to bare carbon fiber. It's UV stable. It's not going to come off if you apply it properly. The amount of masts we've seen that have been painted with 2K car acrylic. The other popular one is Perfection polyurethane varnish. It all just peels off. It'll all peel off. It doesn't matter how well you sand it, how well you wipe it down, how well you prep it. It will peel off in the sun after a year. We've seen some of our masts back 5 years, and they're not as shiny as they were when they left because they've had halyard beating on them and things, but they're still, it hasn't peeled off around the fittings. It hasn't peeled off in big sections up the front of the mast where it sits in the wind all winter. It's just the product that works properly.
Interesting, actually, to put some comparison with that, because we've done quite a lot of work in the automotive market in some pretty tough areas on some fairly expensive cars if they've got carbon fiber on them, as I'm sure you can imagine. But when they send it to the Mara test facilities, they came back and we were tested against all the sort of top end automotive lacquers, and UV wise, it smashed it. It was as good, if not quite a lot better than the top end of the automotive things for UV protection. But the bit people miss is it's not just about UV protection, because it's about that epoxy element to it, the epoxy part of the urethane, which gives you the adhesion that you're talking to. But the toughness, and when they do something called, Chris, you've been a bit involved in this, the gravel test, haven't you? Where they
I've seen the results. I haven't actually been involved in the testing. It's fundamentally a scaled up shot blasting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just using really big particles. But the Durepox Clear stands up to it very well. I think its adhesion to the carbon seems to hold on, and I think it's just got a little bit of give in it, so it doesn't chip as well.
Yes, that toughness, isn't it? You just get. I mean, you know, if you look at it UV wise, I mean, we've probably got better UV products in some of our yacht ranges. I mean, Pete talked about Allcraft 2000 from our All Grip range the other day, which we quite often use over the top. So, but UV wise, it's as good as any of the other non-marine, that's for sure. But that impact resistance and toughness is really what makes it stand out. Any tips you're willing to give up to us, Pete? Do you use it to get rid of the old pinholes in carbon? It's always everybody's plague.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of more of the molded masks rather than the filament wound type masks that use a shrink tape that have had pinholes. So all we've ever done is just brush on a couple of coats and flat it back, and then spray the final coat to give you a nice finish. Doesn't shrink too much into the pinholes, but if you do leave it a few days, it just does its little bit of shrinking, and you can just ferret it all out. So yeah, we do the Exocet Moth decks with high performance clear as well, and again just brush a few coats on to do the pinhole filling, and then a final coat over the top.
Yeah. I like to use the brushing and rolling trick as well to try and help with those pinholes. Actually, sometimes I'll brush and roll it and then almost spray a coat straight over the top as fast as I can. So you sort of try and get slightly the finish of spraying, but the ability to push paint into pinholes with the roller works quite nicely. Chris, you got any more tips on that side? You've done a fair few carbon bits in your days as well.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I never really used a brush. I used a roller quite a lot. I've also squeegeed it in sometimes if you're trying to get a very thin coat on, but that only really works on flatter areas. It's just trying to get that initial fill and bond is what's key, without creating too much sanding down the line.
It's worth noting, you know, Pete's very kindly joined us, giving away some but not all of his secrets. But it is worth noting that Durepox is a hybrid between an epoxy and a urethane. It is designed for professional use, so you should be, if you're looking at this and trying to work out how to do your dinghy mast and bits of this, you really should be going to someone like Pete or many other dinghy guys around the country. Making sure that you've got to be pretty safe when you're using products like this. So yeah, professional use. Anything more to add on your experiences with Durepox, Pete, before we wrap up?
No, I mean, other than you know, we've used cans and cans and cans of it. It is our go-to product for pretty much priming anything, because it doesn't react with anything. It sticks to everything. Yeah, it's just really good. You know, you don't end up having any problems with chemical interactions between different fillers and paints and all this kind of thing. You know, Allcraft 2000 sticks to it. It's just brilliant. It's our favorite paint.
Oh, Pete, thanks. I'll pass back to Chris if we've missed anything and to finish us up.
Yeah, so I think we've covered all of the sort of dinghy aspects of Durepox there. It's a pretty big subject, and the three of us could talk about it all day. So thank you for joining us, and so goodbye from Simon.
Thank you very much. See you all soon.
And a special thank you to Pete. Thank you very much for your time today, mate.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right. We've done a number of other videos. They're all linked down below in the description. And if you've got any other questions, please get in touch with the team at marineware.com, and we will endeavour to help you. Thank you very much.